So this is it, the end of the road. The finale of Season 2 of Andor is finally here and we need to break it down, so let's get straight into it. We begin episode 10 and as usual, another year has passed, taking us right into a year before the Battle of Yavin. We see Luthen getting ready to meet Lonnie and just before he leaves, he talks to Clea who tells him to leave if it doesn't seem perfect. To which Luthen says that he thinks they used up all the perfect. And throughout this episode, you get the foreboding sense that Luthen's time is up. Even in the previous episode, after Mon manages to escape Coruscant, the show has steadily dropped hints at the finality of the character. Luthen meets up with Lonnie and he then reveals that Miro is getting close to him, letting Luthen know that Dedra has put together a tactical group. But more importantly, Lonnie reveals that the Emperor's energy program is actually a cover for a superweapon, which is obviously the Death Star. Lonnie mentions that the Empire is not looking for partisans on Jeddah but Kyber crystals, which references Saw's activity on the planet and the Empire's mining of Kyber crystal, something which we saw in Rogue One. He also mentions Scarif and labor camps, with Scarif being the location of the Death Star plans, and the labor camps referencing Narkina 5, the prison Cassian was in back in Season 1, where they were forced to work on pieces for the Death Star project. Lonnie tries to bargain his way out of this as he knows that his cover is blown and that he has to look after his family. Luthen promises Lonnie that he'll take him to Yavin, the location of the rebel base, but as it is revealed, he does no such thing. We also get to see a Tuca cat being the one to sniff him out, which is pretty interesting. Tuca cats are of the same species as Loth cats, which are of course native to the planet Lothal, Ezra's home world. In the Rebels show, we learned that Loth cats alongside Loth wolves have a pretty special connection to the Force. So I do wonder if us seeing the Loth cats here is another way the show is reminding us of the presence of the Force in this universe, perhaps also letting us know that Lonnie is symbolically one with the Force now. It's a pretty cold move on Luthen's part, but it is Luthen's way of tying up loose ends. This is really a decision that feeds into the idea that Luthen has done far too many terrible things despite the cause that he is fighting for, a sense of weight and tiredness that we see him carry throughout both seasons. Luthen passes the info off to Clea and we hear the name Galen Erso, father of Jyn Erso and the lead scientist on the Death Star project. Luthen tells Clea that he will be the one to burn the comms, not her, and this is really just Luthen saving Clea from harm's way. He already knows from Lonnie that the ISB are getting close, and so making sure that Clea doesn't return to the shop ensures that if the ISB are coming, she won't be there. This is perhaps one of the few rare moments where Luthen isn't willing to sacrifice others, something which is explained through their special connection. Luthen pours a sort of metallic acid on the comms and Dedra pays him a visit. This is probably also one of the few highly anticipated encounters between characters of the show, and immediately you know that this isn't Miro on a shopping trip, as she is simply smiling far too much. In the background we see a Kalikori from Ryloth, which is a family heirloom passed from one generation to another. Each piece of the Kalikori is added by different generations of the family. Dedra sets her case down next to Padme's headwear, the two continue to play pretenses, and Luthen shows Dedra a Nautolan bleeder, which is supposedly 60 centuries old. The Nautolans were a species from the planet Glee Anslem, the homeworld of Kit Fisto. You can see the figurehead of a Nautolan on the pommel of the knife as well. Dedra finally gives away the game by revealing the vintage Imperial Star Path unit from Season 1. Dedra takes the opportunity to gloat in front of Luthen, and as the two trade philosophies, watch how Dedra's pupil dilate again, here thinking that she has won, the same dilation we see on Gorman. As Luthen previously describes her, she is a hunter, and what we are seeing here is her enjoying the thrill of the hunt. Dedra notices the smoke and Luthen makes the ultimate sacrifice. Clea watches from a distance as the ISB sends Luthen to the nearest hospital, and we get our first look at the ISB tactical units who wear stormtrooper armor but with army caps. Back at the ISB HQ, we learn that Pendergast is pretty angry as Miro's raid went south and he learns that Lonnie is dead. Back at the shop, we see the ISB collect evidence and we see one of them scan this, an artifact that we've seen before in the Rebels show. This originates or relates from the Mortis gods, pure Force beings introduced in the Clone Wars, and something that was further explored later in the Rebels show. Clea makes it back to the safe house and she has flashbacks to the day she met Luthen. There's not much to go on here, but from what we can hear and see, Luthen appears to have once been part of the Imperial Army, and by the sounds of it, it seems like they're committing genocide. We then hear Luthen say "make it stop" and saying the words Rosh Nalatz, words spoken in his native language. We then hear a soldier address him as Sergeant Lear, which is likely his original name. Whatever atrocities the Empire is committing here, it's really bad. We hear stuff like there were 50 of them and 3 more settlements to go, all of which gives us a hint to the scale of destruction that is occurring here. Luthen finds Clea hidden inside and he tells her to be quiet. This whole sequence really just gives us a clue into his background and what got him into the fight in the first place. It is quite refreshing to see his journey becoming to a rebel is really no different to the others that join, making him sort of grounded in this everyday people perspective. At the hospital, we see Luthen being kept alive by a machine which seemingly pumps oxygen into him, which likely means that when Luthen stabbed himself, he likely punctured his own lung to ensure that he wouldn't be able to speak. It's a pretty gruesome way to go as you effectively drown in your own blood. Clea infiltrates the hospital and we see an alien in a Bacta tank, the very same type we saw Luke in Empire Strikes Back. Hurt confronts Dedra, who accuses her of overstepping, to which she responds that she is afraid that there would be a leak, which is quite accurate as that is precisely what happened. None of this really matters anyways, as Dedra is arrested by the ISB Marshal, which I assume is their version of internal affairs. In another flashback, we see Clea and Luthen trade and sell things in order to make a living, and it's quite clear that they have been selling antiquities for quite some time. The two make a pretty good team as Clea is pretty good at bartering and helping out. Clea asks if she is now his daughter, which speaks to the complexity of their relationship, a mash and somewhere in between parent, child, and accomplices. It also becomes abundantly clear that as complex as it is, Clea still loves Luthen very much. We see Luthen sell a Devaronian victory necklace, and the Devaronians were a species that looked like devils, something which we saw more of in The Mandalorian. We see Clea witness the Empire's execution of innocent people, and Luthen teaches her the importance of fighting to win, even if it means losing in the meantime. It's an interesting lesson, one that speaks to the patience needed in their fight against the Empire. So you can only imagine how many years Luthen has spent in this struggle and how much he has given to the cause. We also get a scene where we see Luthen and Clea again on a different planet, and I have a feeling that this is Naboo. Between the waters and the color of the roofs, this really reminded me of Padme's home world, which would very likely have been heavily monitored by the Empire. Another interesting detail here is notice how the two of them have steadily traded up their way in life. Starting from rags, the two gradually dress better and better, something which is also reflected by the increasingly refined settings they find themselves in. Clea is impatient about fighting the Empire, and Luthen is hesitant about getting her involved as she is only a child. Luthen offers her the trigger, which she takes up, but Luthen stops her, showing that he does care about her innocence. We also get a moment where he teaches her how to blend in, to not look at the blast site before it happens so as to not give away that they were the ones responsible. It's a neat little detail. In these 3 flashback scenes, the show also gives us a clue as to how Luthen and Clea built their way up as a means of putting themselves in a better position to fight against the Empire, eventually leading them to the very heart of Coruscant, rubbing shoulders with the elite. Again, speaking to Luthen's willingness and patience. Back at the hotel, Clea demonstrates her skills as she gets past security and she triggers several explosions, targeting ISB transports as a distraction. Clea manages to make it to Luthen's room and disconnects Luthen, performing the ultimate sacrifice by essentially killing her father. It's as big of an ask for the rebellion as it gets, and if you pay attention to Luthen's face, you can see his expression change from one of pain to relief, almost as if he knew this had to be done, and is relieved that it was done to spare him from the pain of revealing anything to the ISB. This relief may also stem from the fact that Luthen's fight in this rebellion is over. He's done all he can, and after years, he is finally given the chance to rest. I think it's a moment where Luthen would have been proud of Clea, and the fact that they don't even get to speak to each other makes this all feel too real. It's just simply a great way to say goodbye to a character that has been so integral to the rebellion and this show. On to episode 11, and we see Hertz in the aftermath investigating Clea's work. The ISB suspect that it was the work of a team of 3, which again speaks to Clea's proficiency. We see him immediately throw Miro under the bus by stressing that this was under her responsibility. He coerces the director of the hospital into cooperating, and we see Dedra on the monitor in a holding cell. The numbers on the screen are also constantly moving around, which is likely measuring heart rate, breathing, and so on. We see Krennic in the chamber, and as he turns off the monitor, notice how the lights on the two cameras turn off as well, something which Dedra notices. Not surprising considering that she has been on the opposite end of the interrogation many times before. It was then revealed that Dedra has been probing where she shouldn't have in pursuit of Axis. We hear Dedra say,
Death Star.
The first time we hear it in the show. We also hear that a lot of classified information has been sent to Dedra by mistake, which is why she knows more about the project. We hear stuff like Gorman mining schedules, which of course refer to the Calcite mining operation going on there. We hear orbital progress assessments, which likely refers to the Death Star orbital laser capabilities, and Iyadu research journals referencing the secret research facility Galen is stationed on. On top of this, we also hear that she has 2 years worth of Jedha working group printouts, which refers to the Empire's Kyber crystal operation on the planet. Dedra learns that Lonnie has been accessing these through her account, which shocks her as she now realizes that she is in deep trouble. What I do find interesting about Dedra is that while she tries to remain composed most of the time, the moment the interaction becomes physical, we see her get scared. We see it here with Krennic, then with Cyril, and further back on Ferrix. It's an interesting detail about the character, and I've got to say, Angry Krennic is always a joy to watch.
Are we blind? Deploy the garrison!
This particular scene I think highlights the hubris and arrogance that Dedra has had throughout the entire show, something which now has become her own undoing. Dedra's obsession with Luthen essentially caused her own downfall despite her competencies. It's also interesting to note that despite her success on Gorman, Dedra doesn't even get anything for it. She still retains the same rank as before, and she doesn't even get the benefit of the doubt in this situation, really speaking to how ungrateful and ruthless the Empire can be, a treatment that Krennic himself received on Scarif later on. The Empire catches on to Clea and begins the hunt for her. Clea manages to get the word out about the situation, and on Yavin, Wilmon receives the message. We see Cassian and Melshi playing tiles with K2SO, and the three look like they're having the best of times. It's a nice bit of interaction as we see K2SO now reprogrammed, trying to learn how humans work. It's a running joke that continues on to Rogue One as well.
Explosions for two people blending in.
Freeze, right there.
You're right. I should just wait on the ship.
We see them drinking Revnok, a well-known alcohol in Star Wars. Hertz meets with Krennic and Pendergast, and he receives his order to hunt down Clea. He is also told that if he fails, he's not going to live to see another day. Pendergast provides him with a cover story on why they are hunting her, spinning a tale about a disease as part of an effort to hide the Death Star project. Krennic tells Pendergast that he cannot protect him, even using his first name Leo. It's clear that these two have a pretty close working relationship, but what is also clear is that a big screw up such as this doesn't just affect the supervisors but also Pendergast himself, which also speaks to just how insanely important the Death Star project is to the Empire. Leo complains that the Death Star should have been ready by now, a delay which was caused by Galen's uncooperative behavior. We learn from Krennic that they are merely days away from completion, and that Pendergast sounds like Tarkin, hinting at how the two of them dislike each other, a dynamic we see more clearly in Rogue One. Wilmon tells Cassian about the situation. K2SO asks a whole bunch of questions that go unanswered as they still don't quite trust him despite him being reprogrammed. The team decide to set off for Coruscant unplanned, which doesn't make General Draven very happy, and it's a repeated pattern of behavior that also ends up occurring in Rogue One, with Cassian running off to do what he feels is right in true rebel fashion. Hertz visits Dedra for some advice, and we see that Dedra is looking increasingly disheveled due to her situation, and she tells him to look into her old files, specifically regarding Radios and Anton Krieger, someone who was first mentioned in Season 1 to be a separatist rebel who was later caught and killed by Dedra. The ISB pick up on the rebel signal, and it's all hands on deck as they move in. Cassian and the team arrive as well, and we learn that it's Melshi's first time on Coruscant, reminding us just how big this galaxy is. We can see a few shots where we see the ISB tactical getting ready, and the detail on their uniform is immaculate. The little smudges of dirt really help make this world feel lived in. K2SO is left on the ship and is told to stay there, which as we see later doesn't really happen, which is the same thing that occurred on Jedha as well in Rogue One.
Are you talking about me?
The ISB fly in on a Lambda-class shuttle, which we have seen many times before. The ISB uses a special device to find the location, and it looks like some sort of triangulation device. Cassian receives the intel and tries to convince Clea to come with them to Yavin. Clea is hesitant at first because she doesn't like the rebels on Yavin, and the rebels of Yavin don't like Luthen's brand of rebellion. We now move on to the last episode, and Cassian urges her to see what she helped build on Yavin, which I think is very fair, especially after everything she has sacrificed. K2SO takes things into his own hands quite literally, and it's so satisfying to watch him plow through Imperials, especially after the scene on Gorman. K2 effectively uses the Lambda to block all comms, including the Imperials, which creates a blackout for everyone. The show also makes pretty good use of Hertz's height, as him standing next to the tactical team makes them seem so physically intimidating. It's also something we see repeatedly throughout the show with Dedra as well. While the ISB are intimidating in their own right, when it comes to physical action or operations, they do seem very out of place, which makes sense as they are intelligence officers. The ISB tactical team move in and end up catching the rebels off guard. The rebels are hit with a concussion grenade, which looks quite similar to a thermal detonator, and Clea is hit badly. The way this whole operation plays out just goes to show how good the ISB tacticals are, at least until K2 shows up. K2 gets his own little hallway scene, which at this point is a must in every single Star Wars show, and the fact that we see it here is also super appropriate considering that Rogue One was the movie that really kicked off this idea. This is such a great scene simply because we already know how intimidating KX droids can be, so to see it now used on the Imperials is just so satisfying. My favorite shot has to be K2 using Hertz as a shield while he walks forward, and even the Imperials are scared of him. The team managed to leave just in time, and we see some Imperial patrol transports swoop in, also first seen in the Rebels show. Mon talks to Saw, who is on Jedha, and Mon is concerned that Saw is attracting far too much attention with his activities on Jedha, and is concerned what it might mean for the rest of them. It's a vastly different philosophy that guys like Saw and Luthen have, who are more willing to let things burn if it means hurting the Empire. Mon, on the other hand, actually cares for what happens to people who are caught in between, which is why they don't really see eye to eye. Bail is also now on Yavin, and we see Saw's paranoia get worse and worse. Cassian and the team make it back to Yavin. We see this guy on the radio, and it's the same guy that we also see on the radio later in Rogue One, so more familiar faces. We also get to see Admiral Raddus, the admiral who we also see in Rogue One, leading the rebels in the space battle on Scarif. All I can say is that this guy is a solid dude, probably one of the best characters in the movie. We hear Raddus say that they are lucky that Merrick is away and he would have shot Cassian down himself, and Merrick refers to General Merrick, the ace pilot who we also see in Rogue One. Clea is taken to the medbay and Cassian meets with the Rebel Council. Here we also get to see Senator Pomlo and Jabel, both of which we saw in Rogue One as well. Jabel is the Rebels finance minister and often supported bills against the Empire in the Senate. These two honestly are probably the worst of the rebellion, almost costing the rebellion before it even began when they refused to support Jyn. And here they are still no different. Cassian shares that Luthen is dead and the meeting doesn't go well. The senators besides Mon are all skeptical, and as the meeting goes on, as the audience you feel so infuriated at these people, especially now knowing what Cassian, Luthen, and a whole bunch of others have been through to get here. It gets worse when these privileged senators start dragging Luthen's name through the mud. Granted, Luthen has done some pretty terrible things, but it's also undeniable that there wouldn't be a rebellion without him. And so to hear these senators who have done a fraction of what Luthen has done to get the rebels where they are today, expressing smirks and rude remarks just gets your blood boiling. And I think this scene is a rare moment where I actually really didn't like Bail either, but Cassian shoots him down pretty well after hinting at his own security failures during Mon's extraction. Now, to be fair, the Rebels Council skepticism can somewhat be understood, as Luthen did make it very hard to cooperate with him, and he doesn't leave behind the greatest sense of trust with his methods. That being said, I still think that the Council should have at least entertained the idea of looking deeper, something which clearly only Mon and Draven can really appreciate. We hear how Merrick and Dodonna are arriving tomorrow, which will allow the Council to vote on the matter. And it's an interesting difference between the Rebels before and after. Now that there is a more centralized leadership, ship and system, things move slower, unlike previously where rebels operated independently and in separate cells, which could move a lot faster, but I guess it's a trade-off that needs to be paid. We hear Draven tell Cassian that there is a contact on Kafrene called Tivik who is urgently reaching out, referencing the man Cassian would meet later in Rogue One who confirms the construction of a superweapon. We see Mon and Vel talk about Luthen. Vel and Cassian toast to the dead, naming Luthen, Gorn, Nemik, Taramyn, Cinta, the Gormans, Ferrex, and the Donnies. It's a long list of dead throughout this show, speaking to the number of people who have given their lives for the cause. We then get to hear Nemik's iconic message from Season 1, the same message that got Cassian into the fight, and as we learn, this is a speech that has spread galaxy-wide, something which we see Pendergast listening to in his final moments. We see Largart talk to Pendergast, and it's pretty clear that he is being court-martialed over his failures to contain the secret about the Death Star. Pendergast ends himself, a fitting end for someone like him, and we get a small detail where Largart respects this decision. Vel tells Cassian to reconnect with Bix, but Cassian says later after it's all over, which as we know isn't going to happen. We also see Clea walking through the rain alone in this rebel camp, which is a sad sight. Only really knowing Luthen her whole life, and now that he's not here, it has to be lonely. It's also a strange feeling that she feels alone in this area she helped create and should feel the safest. Again, speaking to the cost of the work that she has been doing all these years. So it is expected that she would feel lost without Luthen's guiding hand. It's going to be hard for her to adjust, finding it within herself to trust more people and connect with them. Cassian is sent to Kafrene after Draven shares intel with him, and Cassian dreams of his childhood and his missing sister, a question that is unanswered even up until now. Bail meets with Cassian, who gives him his blessing by saying "May the Force be with you," which I believe is the first time we hear it being said in this show. We see Cassian put on his jacket from Rogue One, and we see Melshi leading a squad with a Drabotan by the name of Powell, another minor character we see later on the beaches of Scarif. We see Mon having breakfast with the rebels, which is a nice touch, showing her as a leader of the people. We then see Perrin, who is still on Coruscant, having drank his mind away, and sitting next to him is Davos Skalden's wife, implying that the two are having an affair. It's a strange shot to see him like this, and it really does leave it up to interpretation as to what he is thinking. We then get a shot of Dedra in a Narkina 5 prison uniform, the very same Cassian was in back in Season 2, and it's just so ironic that she is here as she is surrounded by the very people she probably helped put here. You can tell that she is broken by this point, as she has been casted aside by the very system she worked for, a very fitting end for her character. Cassian walks to his ship, catching the eye of the Force Healer, and he nods to her, finally embracing his greater destiny. And we see Saw and Jedha looking at the destroyer, something which we also get to see more of in Rogue One. We see Krennic looking at the Death Star without its dish attached just yet, a last piece that we see installed in the film. Cassian and K2 head off to Kafrene, and we cut to B on Minarau, and we see Bix holding a child. It's a really bittersweet twist in the story, as this is obviously Cassian's child and someone he will never get to meet or know. It's such a beautiful shot with Bix and the child in the field of wheat. In a way, as Cassian recognizes his greater destiny, his call to action as part of his hero's journey, which kicked off in the previous 3 episodes, his fight in Rogue One now means more than ever. His sacrifice, knowing and unknowing that he is doing it for the next generation. It's such a poetic end to the show, and one I think that couldn't have been done any better. Overall, while the finale wasn't as intense or action-packed as the other episodes of the show, I think it being a little slower makes a lot of sense, as it builds the anticipation for the final film. I mean, after watching all of this, all I want to do now is watch Rogue One. And what a show these 2 seasons of Andor has been. It's been such an insanely and hauntingly beautiful ride that I am so glad that I am alive to see it. Anyways, that's all for this breakdown. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I am the Lost Acolyte.
And I have spoken.